Hey y'all, welcome to episode 10 of CRV 123 on Whip Tips. I'm Doc, your host. In that last episode, we finished up our front suspension. If you're following along with me and doing the same work, we finished the front suspension. You should feel good about that because you're about to go into the rear suspension. And I got to be honest, this was a pain in the butt. And by the time I got started with this, I was exhausted with working on this car. I had to get it on the road soon. I was working night and day, and I just needed to get this done. So I cut a few corners, and I'll show you where I cut those corners. Hopefully it won't come back to bite me on the you-know-what. Anyway, what we're doing is basically putting in Old Man Emu springs. I can't remember how much lift this gives you in the back, but it gives you at least an inch. I think it's close to 2 inches, but not quite. New KYB. I always get confused KRB or KYB, but it's KYB rear struts. And like I said, I'd rather be on a four-wheel drive doing wheelies like this guy than working on this CRV at this point. Let's just get to the bluegrass. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is go into the back of your car, find the secret compartment there, pop the panel off, and start removing the two nuts that hold your rear struts in. You're going to have to use an extension on your ratchet, so if you don't have those, get ratchet extensions. Kind of awkward because you can't get quite in straight, but it's not that difficult either unless they're completely rusted frozen. So just take your time, do it right, get those off. And then this is a diagram of what we're going to do in terms of where things are on the rear suspension. And what we're going to do is start with the brake line. We're going to remove that and give yourself some room. And there are two places we're going to remove the brake line. And I shouldn't say remove the brake line. We're going to take off the bracket that attaches it to the rear suspension. We're not doing anything with the brake line or the calipers in this case. So there are two places where the brake line is attached to the car. We're only doing this one first, where the number 1 is marked. Then we're gonna remove the upper control arm bolt at position 2, which is attached to the frame, and then we're gonna remove the upper control arm bolt at position 3 down there toward the steering knuckle. So here we go. I was dealing with a rusted mess back there, and I don't have a good view of this, but I'm working on getting that brake line bracket removed so that I can kind of let the hose swing freely and stuff. And later on, we're going to do the ABS bracket. But I'm just having a hell of a time with the brake line bracket because, like I said, all the mud and dirt and rust over the years on this thing it was a nightmare. And in some places you might see rust falling from above, and that was a lot of fun. So here I am getting ready to do the upper control arm bolt. That was a nightmare. The upper control arm itself was essentially, the bushings were all rotted out. It was starting to rust, so definitely needed to get this thing removed. Definitely keep your hydraulic jack nearby because you can use that to lift up the suspension and help remove pressure off of some of these bolts. Here I've got the bolt removed, but I just can't get the damn thing out. You can see I'm using a pry bar. That's not working, so I try to keep unscrewing it. Sometimes that works. That didn't do it. I think at one point I went to a series of different screwdrivers, just pounding that bolt on the flange, trying to get it out. Careful not to touch you don't want to mess up the threads. And I am using a rubber mallet, but I think at some point I went to the big 4.5 pound sledge. And you can see one thing to note, man, is like the I don't know if you can see it, but the upper control arm bushing there is just crumbling rubber. I mean, it's done. It's done for. That thing was on its last leg. So now finally I'm moving to the other bolt on the lower control arm, and that attaches to the steering knuckle. Did I say lower control arm? Sorry, I meant upper control arm. This was also a nightmare, but not quite as bad as the one closer to the frame, or the one that attaches it to the frame. This one wasn't as bad because jacking up the suspension or lowering it really did remove the pressure. And in this case, it just took a little finagling. And again, I had to use my screwdriver and kind of do some pounding and use the pry bar and everything. But eventually that bolt came out and it was easier than the other one. So next, what we're going to do is the ABS line mounting bracket there at position 4. and that is attached to the control arm. This one was not too hard. You may want to do this before you remove the control arm, just so that it's you have something rigid to work on. But this definitely made the angles easier, and there's a little plastic squeeze thing that you have to squeeze and then push out to get the thing to release. Of course, I broke mine, but that's okay because the new ones came with a new mounting bracket and everything. And there it is. It's out. Yay! Next, we're going to go on to number 5, which is the lower strut bolt. And that one was interesting. So the rear space in general is really tight to work with. You have to reach down and through, use an extension if you've got one to break that thing free, and then you should be able to ratchet it out pretty easily. And at that point, I think the bolt is almost free here, but at that point I tried to remove the strut and it wasn't coming out. It just wasn't. The brake line was in the way. And that's when I realized I had to go on to this, number 6 here, and remove the brake line mounting bracket from the frame there. And once I did that, then there was enough space to kind of work with, and I'll show you that in a second. But these bolts also were rusted and difficult to deal with. Look, do your best, be gentle. Try not to snap these bolts because they are so old, and it did take a while. It's funny that the bracket bolts were the ones that gave me the most trouble in some cases. So anyway, once I got that out, then it was time to embrace the suck and try and get that strut out through whatever space you have. It is doable. Not easy, but doable. Now, in this next section, you're going to hear me say that I'm trying to continue to get the brake line bracket removed. That's a mistake. I thought that's what I was doing when I was watching this video and doing the voiceover. In fact, what I'm doing is marking the top hat, marking the upper spring mount to show which way points to the front. And throughout this process, you need to do stuff like that, because if you'll notice as I take this thing out, the upper spring mount aligns kind of parallel to the car frame, but the lower strut bolt that goes through and attaches to the lower suspension there, that is at an angle. That is not parallel with the frame. So you're going to run into a nightmare of angles in the next video. I'll talk about that. But definitely at this point, mark which is the front of your strut and which is the back, because if your strut's like mine, it's rusted, and if those markings ever existed, you might not be able to see them at this point. Be very, very careful, mark everything, take pictures, and then you should be good to go. And the big problem here is that evap, that big square thing with the kind of vent on it, that is like the evap system for the CRV, and that is really in the way. I think the other side is easier. And so here I am still trying to figure out the angles, still trying to use a pry bar. Essentially what I'm trying to do is pull that thing straight down, but angle it toward the front. And you know, that's just not working. So then I start trying to angle it over the lower control arm, but again toward the front, to get it out between the lower control arm and the brake line. And I'm just going inch by inch, moving it down and then moving the brake line, using the pry bar to free up some space, moving it down, moving the brake line. And I'm pushing down there on the lower control arm. At this point, you have no idea how much sweat's pouring off me, how frustrated I'm getting. Again, I said at the beginning of this video, I just wanted this to be over. And so this was a struggle. It was a real fight. And luckily, I hadn't broken anything up until this point. You've got to be really careful. Then, eventually, success. I mean, I'm so close right here. And eventually, it just popped out, popped free. Yay, job done. You've just successfully disassembled your rear end to the point where I did. If you look carefully throughout this video, go back and take a look at the bushing on the knuckle, the upper bushing where I removed the place where the upper control arm connects to the steering knuckle. There's a bushing in the actual knuckle itself, and it's completely rotted. I should have pressed it out and replaced it. I didn't. Because this job was so maddening, so frustrating, and I just wanted to get it done. So anyway, congratulations if you're following along and doing the same thing on your CRV. The next part is easier, reinstalling things. Well, easier in some ways, more difficult in others. So stay tuned. The next episode will drop soon. Doc out. Oh, you made it to the end. That's awesome. Listen, I'm Doc. I'm the one who's, the voice behind these videos. And I really appreciate you taking the time to actually watch the whole thing. That's fantastic. If you've got time, if you want to, if you like the video, hit like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to hit the bell button so you get notified of new videos when I put them up. I'm going to try and do one a week. And I'm going to do a bunch of Instagram stuff, so make sure you follow me there and on Twitter. Instagram's going to be the shorter stuff. I don't have any merchandise yet. I'm planning to as the channel grows. If I succeed, I'll get some merch. For now, if you really want to help me in another way, you like these videos enough, I'm going to put links to my books in the description of the video. I'm a science fiction author in my spare time as well, so I'm juggling a lot of balls. But anyway, I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you at the next one. Hey, do me a favor and turn this junk off. I don't know how to deal with tech.